Everyone has a bright light inside of them that deserves to be seen by the world. That's why it's time to shine the light on the extraordinary who are accomplishing phenomenal things. This is the Shine Out Loud Show with Lillian Ogbogo.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you may be. This is another episode of the Shine Out Loud Show. Yes, we are doing the Saturday specials because we just have so many awesome people to interview that we just can't give you one a week sometimes. You have to have a twofer. So for this week, our twofer is a man who was inspired by what he was seeing in his industry. The fact that a lot of people from the Black and Asian and mixed communities were having their planning issues. We're having planning issues with their properties and having their applications denied, enforcement sent in, and just the chaos that ensued from that. And he said, enough is enough. So I have none other than the founder and managing director of MZA Planning. Now, this is a man who is in a very unique position. He's a first and only Black-owned planning business in the UK. I'm talking about Yussuf Mwanza. So join me and welcome Yussuf. Hi, Yussuf.
Hi there, Lillian. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. So, I'm curious because, we all think having a property, getting an extension is easy. But, we talk about what zoning, we talk about planning. So let's start at the very beginning. What is zoning and why is it important to our daily lives?
Well, the government has set out a set of rules and regulations relating to the planning system. And if you don't play by those rules, in effect, you don't receive your planning permission.
Right.
And it could be for something as basic as a porch, an extension, to an office block. You've got to play by the rules in order to secure planning permission.
Right. So, you are a planner and your company does planning, but why do we need, shouldn't it just be a simple case of, I have an idea, I'm going to take it in and fill in an application? Isn't it that simple?
Quite often it is. Quite often what you'll find is that anyone can just fill out the form and submit it to the local authority with plans. And yes, you can be successful in submitting your application, but there are certain situations that one may encounter whereby it becomes a bit more complicated. Mm-hmm. The local authority become a bit more demanding in terms of what they require from you. Mm-hmm. And then you can find yourself in a position where you have your application refused or it's compromised.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about paperwork, and we all know that paperwork can be confusing, maddening, and just, you read it and you're like, did somebody from Klingon write this, and why is it like this? So, why is it designed to frustrate, or is there purpose to the paperwork being the way it is?
I think it's just part and parcel of the system, what it is. It's the nature of the beast. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with semi-legal matters, and quite often it has to be phrased in legal ease, as it were. Mm-hmm. There is no way around that because they are dealing with things that are very specific and very precise. So the language they use has to be that way. The problem is if you're someone who doesn't necessarily understand that or interprets it incorrectly, then you're in a lot of trouble potentially.
Right.
And I've seen so many people who have, let's say, built extensions or started businesses and fallen foul of the planning rules. So, for example, many people are of the view that, well, it's my property. I can do as I please. I don't need planning permission. Why should I need planning permission to change my retail shop to a restaurant? Surely if I have the lease or I own it, I should be able to just carry out the change of use or the extension.
But isn't that the case? I mean, I legally own it. I own the land. I own everything. So why can't I make changes?
So first of all, you have to go through the planning process because the government have basically said that there is a term called development, and development is defined by certain actions. So it's called sort of building, engineering, mining operations and changes of use. All of these things are development.
Right.
And if you do one of these things, you need to submit a planning application. So if you're not aware of that in the first place, then you could be in a lot of trouble. And
Right.
as I said, I've seen people who've been asked to demolish extensions, stop businesses that they've started.
Wow.
By the councils, by the local authorities.
Okay, and this was one of the things that inspired you to start your company, because you found out a lot of BME applications were being turned down. Now, we're not saying that there's a particular link to it just because it's a BME application, but my question is, how can we then better prepare ourselves for that process? What do we need to know in terms of the basics?
So I used to work in several local planning authorities, and as part and parcel of that, we would often advise members of the public. Members of the public would come in for advice, so we would advise them on how to present their applications, what content it needed. But also I was in a position where I would process planning applications, and I would see applications submitted by the BAME community,
Right.
quite often failing because of a lack of content, failing because they weren't focused on the right issues,
Right.
badly prepared. And again, really through no fault of their own. It may be that they didn't know that there was someone like a planning consultant out there that was there to hold their hand and help them to present the application in the correct manner. So yes, that didn't sit well with me, that these applications were being refused. So when I started, I made a concerted effort to reach out and to help as many people as I could.
Okay, and that's really incredible. So let me ask this. So you've made part and parcel of your business is reaching out to the community to educate. So it's a case of lack of knowledge and the fact that the system is like, well, we're not going to tell you what you don't know. So in the end, your application will be denied because it's like a vicious circle.
Yeah.
So if we want this vicious circle to stop, how can people, what's the first thing that you would advise them to do?
I think there's no one easy solution. So, for example, we had a client who had a restaurant, and this restaurant had a condition, and the condition basically stated that there was he couldn't use it for takeaway services, but he was using it. Okay,
Right.
He didn't particularly understand this condition, and as a result of that, he was issued with an enforcement notice and was being forced to close down. Now, there's a whole backstory to this. It was quite a lot of drama surrounding this particular restaurant.
Right.
And there was a lot of, let's say, local residents who were ganging up against this particular restaurant.
Oh, wow.
Because of what they represented. But what I would say is that through it all, we have to empower ourselves and become wise and gain knowledge about the system and how the system works on so many levels. And it could be also from engaging more in the system, becoming elected members, becoming local councillors, MPs, having influence, having a voice that can be heard. But on the basic level of planning applications, as an applicant, really just reaching out to companies that can help in this area.
Okay. Now, I mentioned in the very beginning in your introduction, you are in a unique position because you are first and only, Black-owned planning agency in the UK. And that is to be celebrated in itself. But do you think in 2019 that's a position that you don't want to hold? Should there be more planning companies owned by people of color in this country?
There should be. I mean, I think it's one, the planning industry and its profile. Many people that I speak to don't even know about planning, don't even know about planning being a potential career path. I believe that needs to be addressed. I know the Royal Town Planning Institute are trying to address that by opening it up to students to get them on board. And I think in addition to that, it's also about embracing diversity within the planning field, within local authorities, within the planning inspectorate, making it more accessible to all.
Okay. And I think that's important, is because we need more diversity in every industry, because it adds a breadth of knowledge. You know, and we are talking about you.
Absolutely.
We're talking about you where you are right now, but let's look at your journey, because let's understand, because your background, how did you get into planning and decide, yeah, this was my career path, this is what I want to do, and how did you get to the point that you said, I'm going to start a business?
So for me, it was quite a unique situation. I left school, and my parents were like, well, it would be great if you could work and gain the experience at the same time. So there were some opportunities at Brent Council that came up, and they were within the surveying field, the architecture field, and the planning field.
Right.
I believe I applied for all three.
Okay.
And these were day release positions. I got the planning role, and what that involved was basically working or going to college one day a week and one evening a week, and working the rest of the week.
Right.
So it was really, really a great opportunity to build up a body of knowledge. And by the end of it, once you're qualified, you've got all this experience, you've got all this practical experience that you can apply. So for me, that was my route into the planning system.
Okay.
And from there, how did I get into business? Well, it's interesting, because I think when I look back, business was always something that I leaned towards, and it started back in the 80s. It started back in the 80s. You may remember this was pre-internet, pre-YouTube, pre-social media, and I was into my music in a big way. So I would go to many concerts. So I went to Prince concerts. I went to the Michael Jackson concert, Bad Tour concert.
Wow.
Luther Vandross, Freddie Jackson, to name a few. Yeah, but it didn't end there. I invested in a recordable Sony Walkman.
Okay.
Pro version. So I basically decided, you know what, I'm going to record these concerts. And I had my little detachable microphone, so I recorded the concerts. And I had this idea of recording the concerts and then placing an advert in a magazine at the time called Record Mirror.
Okay.
And the advert was saying, live concerts with these artists featured, available for sale. And people would basically send in a self-addressed envelope. I would send this carefully designed pro forma back to them. And then it was the response was incredible. People would send their orders in, tick in, the boxes saying, yes, I want 5 copies of this, I want 5 copies of the Prince concert, etc., etc. Yeah, so I was inundated with all these orders, and it gave me a taste of business. And I was buzzing. I really was buzzing. I was thinking, this is amazing. This is something I want to do. It wasn't all roses, because it taught me how to deal with difficult clients at the same time.
Right.
Because there were some people who weren't happy for whatever reason, and they would complain. They complained. So I would have to deal with that. But the vast majority were like, fantastic, this is brilliant, thank you so much, etc., etc. So that fizzled out, but it did give me a taste of business. And I think it was doing my own thing, doing business, being creative. I always leaned towards going into business. So I was always looking at planning applications that we were receiving in the councils, looking at how they were presented, looking at the consultants. Anything that I would hear on TV about someone starting a business, my ears would prick up.
Right.
So with hindsight, I think I was definitely leaning towards that. I remember there was a cousin of ours who started an opticians, and I was like, wow, so you've started your own business. I was just in awe. I was just in awe that you could do that.
Right.
So I always wanted to be my own boss.
Okay. So, I'm thinking. I'm going to put a pin in that conversation because I want to come back to it because there's elements of how you went from watching concerts to saying I'm going to create something out of that to actually taking that leap to starting your own business. But looking at planning, I'm just going back to planning firms and looking at planning and the way London is changing. Could planning firms actually help with stemming the tide of gentrification? And now I ask this question almost in two fields. Gentrification is happening. We can't stop it. But is there a way that planning firms can help make sure that gentrification is not seen as a cleansing act, that there's still some of the local soul left in the community?
Absolutely. The example I gave earlier of this restaurant was or is on Railton Road in Brixton.
Right.
And gentrification was happening, but you had this, let's call it a beacon there that the black community were drawn to.
Yes.
And the local residents didn't like the fact that the patrons of the restaurant or takeaway were basically hanging around outside.
Okay.
They would buy their meal and be outside. So they did whatever they could to dislodge them. Now, what we did as planning consultants to address that was to go along to the planning committee and basically say, look, we are compliant with various policies. It may be that you're saying that there's noise disturbance, etc. Well, we can submit a noise impact assessment. There are various things that we can do to ensure that the necessary checks are in place. There are things that we can do as planning consultants to make sure that businesses can continue, that people's livelihood isn't threatened in any way. So there are many planning tools that we can use as planners to justify proposals. For me, I was driven to with that particular case to ensure that business was able to stay and succeed, and they I believe they're still there today.
Okay. Are you allowed to mention what business this is, or if you're not, we can talk about it offline?
Yeah, I mean it's all in the public domain. So this was the Staff of Life restaurant on Railton Road. I believe they may have changed their name,
okay.
But they had two premises, one with A3 permission, and then another one next door which allowed them to offer takeaway services. But it was just interesting to see exactly how the system in many ways failed them. They were seen as the what's the word, almost like the enemy. But all they were trying to do, the bottom line is they were trying to run a business.
Right.
But again, it comes back to knowing the system, because one of the things the community needs to do is to understand the political nature of planning.
Right.
And the fact that you might need to lobby your councillors and get them on board, etc. And certainly the local residents knew how to work the system to their advantage. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because gentrification, like we keep saying, it's happening, and there has to be a balance because we don't want to lose all the culture and soul of certain areas.
Absolutely.
And so one of the things I noticed that you talk about on your website is a case review. What is it, and why do we need one before we start the building planning process?
So a case review is, I think, is really important. Quite often, or certainly in years gone by, you could walk into your local council planning department and discuss with them what you want to do. You could say, look, I have plans to extend my house, or I have plans to start a restaurant, or whatever it is. And they would sit down with you. They would give you some advice. Sometimes it would be written.
Right.
And invariably it would be free advice. That's by and large gone now. That's morphed into something called a pre-application process.
Okay.
That you have to pay for. It's a more drawn out process. So we basically said, look, what we're going to do is offer advice to people, and the case review service is really just saying, sense checking your proposal. You're saying to me that you want to build let's give you let's say a 4-story building in your back garden. Mm-hmm. That doesn't sound feasible to me at all. So let's sense check it. Let's check the policies and make sure before you even spend money submitting a planning application that your scheme, your proposal has merit.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's that initial step of reviewing your proposal, your aspirations for this plot of land or whatever, and saying, hang on a minute, are you aware of this? Are you aware that across the road they refused an application for these reasons, similar application to yours? That's what the case review service offers.
Okay. So, I'm looking over your website, and you list a lot of cases that you've worked on as a company to help overturn. What has been your most memorable case to overturn?
Oh gosh, now you're asking. You know what? there are so many. There are so many. All I can say, there are too many to mention. The ones that really always stand out is, and there are many of them, is where you've undertaken some work for someone, and they are just so thankful. And it can be a matter of losing their business.
Right.
It could be a matter of having to demolish extensions. There's one that springs to mind in Wembley, where a client had basically converted the property into flats. Mm-hmm. She had converted the garage into a studio, and she had converted the outbuilding at the bottom of the garden into a self-contained studio as well. She was renting all of them out. Yeah. Council found out about it because of a neighbour complaint. It went to public inquiry. Long story short, we won the appeal.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was allowed to keep it. So I basically rang her up, and she was like so anxious. And when I'm in that situation, I sort of tease clients a bit. I string them along a bit. Anyway, she was just let's just say she was very, very emotional. Very emotional. So those are the cases that for me are the standout cases when people are appreciative.
Okay. So, and I looked at a few, and some of them just kind of blew my mind. There was a case around somebody wanted to have a turntable to allow them to turn out their car, with ease, and somebody complained. I'm like, people, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Planning can be very petty. It's I've dealt with a case where when I was working at the council, one neighbour wanted to build an identical roof extension to their neighbours, and the neighbour next door objected, saying, well, no, we don't want them to have it. But it's just like yours. It's going to look exactly the same as yours. Why are you trying to stop them from doing it? It doesn't make sense.
It's called petty. Petty. That's
very,
just petty.
Very, yeah, very petty, very petty. And then, but in that case with the turntable, I mean, the council were just throwing roadblocks at us. I think that was Ealing Council. I remember we were trying to get this client the ability to park off street, basically, and the only way to do it was to have a turntable, and the council said, no, what about if it breaks down, blah, blah, blah. Well, if it breaks down, we fix it.
Exactly, so, but it's on their property.
It's on their property. So we had to get a management plan, and we had to get the manufacturer to produce or tell us the specific details of how this turntable would work, and its how long it would last, etc., etc. So we had to appeal. We went to appeal in the end, and it was successful.
That's just amazing, because I can actually see sometimes the council seem to. I think the word I'm looking for is from a project management term, scope creep, because there are things that you think, okay, this is common sense, that's fine, but then the rest you're thinking, okay, is this just a waste of public time?
Yeah, quite often it seems to me that common sense just seems to go out the window. But that's where we step in. And before we appeal, normally we undertake a case review. If clients are coming to us after a rejection, we would just look at their proposal to see whether or not there is any scope to appeal. Because quite often the proposal was outrageous in the first place and would never receive permission. Right. And if that's the case, we would just tell them. But a lot of the time, it's a question of sticking to your guns and explaining your proposal, why it is acceptable, how it complies with policy. Okay. Yeah.
All right, so let's change gears for a moment. Let's talk about your Brompton cycle love. Where does this stem from?
Brompton. Well, we moved office, I think it was back in 2009, and I basically thought, you know what, let me just get a bike. I just wanted to get a bike, right. But I didn't want to leave the bike outside.
Okay.
That was my thing, because I just didn't want my bike stolen. Yeah, crime and all of that.
Yes.
So I thought, you know what, let me invest in a bike that I can take inside. And the Brompton, produced in the UK, I think they've got a factory in Greenford, stood out to me. So I invested in that folding bike. Had it for 10 years.
Okay.
And they're amazing. They are amazing. And I think I've had over the years 5.
Wow.
5 Bromptons. Yeah, I've got 3 at the moment.
You know, you're one of those people that come on the tube that we all look up and go, dude, the tube is packed. Why? Yeah, well, I haven't been on a packed tube with one, but I know what you mean. I do know what you mean. But hey, you know what? It keeps you fit, and it's great. It's great for zipping around town. You know, I quite often use it to go to appointments and to just get around quickly. I cycle to work and back, so it's fantastic. It's very addictive. You should try it. I'll say no. I look at cycling in London like a contact sport. It's scary. Yeah. I'm like, no. I'll rather get in the ring with Anthony Joshua than cycle.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That bad, eh?
Yes. I've seen people, drive in South London and cyclists. I'm like, no.
But it gets to a point. You have to overcome that fear.
True. But let me tackle Anthony Joshua first, and then I'll come back to cycling.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so we're looking at your business, and more than just what you do as a day-to-day company, you're also involved with Compassion UK. How did that come about?
So Compassion UK came about from my church, and it was just a question of trying to give back and trying to make a difference. So we have 3 children that we're sponsoring, and it's fantastic because we get letters from them, we get photographs. I think we had one just this week. So we need to write back to them and communicate, etc. In addition to that, we've been sponsoring clean water in Uganda. There's a project ongoing there. It's just a little bit that we can do to make a difference in the community, in the world. And as planners, I think it's all about making a change and taking care of the environment and people as well.
Right. I think that's very commendable. And can anybody get involved with Compassion UK? And
absolutely.
So if you can share with us how people can get involved with Compassion UK, because we would love to find out more about that.
So Compassion have a website. I'm just going to Google them. But basically, you can just reach out to them, drop them an email via their website, and they just tell them that you're interested in partnering with them and sponsoring a child, and they will send you a pack.
Okay.
And it's compassionuk.org.
All right. So, guys, you've heard
Yeah,
it here. Check out compassionuk.org and find out about being able to sponsor a child.
that's it.
Now, going back to your business and the fact that you've gone from, working within the council system and to starting your own business, between there and your business today, how has mentoring played a part in your growth?
So, again, one of the things that I always wanted to do is to give people a chance. We have always had an open door to people coming in for a bit of experience. I've seen our company as let's say a place where you can become equipped and then you can move on. Obviously, we would love you to stay and grow so that we can grow together. But
Right.
definitely an inroad into the planning industry, and over the years we've had numerous people come in, some students come in to us, and they've stayed, they've learnt, and you know what? It's so good to see people flourishing. They come in, and quite often they know very little about the planning system, and by the time they leave, the transformation is amazing. So investing in people, mentoring people is absolutely important to us, and it's been a part of our journey.
All right. It is very important, and we need more people who are in these business to mentor and create and open doors.
Yeah, absolutely. So essential. I remember when I was working at the council looking to get into the private sector, and I applied for jobs. There just seemed to be no inroad into it, and I think that's really what led me to even start my own company. If you're not going to give me a job, then I'm going to create my own job. So mentoring is very important, and hopefully, with more visibility, people can see me and always approach, and we can take them on.
Okay, and that's absolutely amazing. Now, I'm going to ask you a left field question here because I watch things like Grand Designs and all of those really amazing, architectural shows.
Yeah.
From your standpoint, I've seen some really crazy buildings. How do those buildings get approved?
I often wonder the same thing because, quite often the designs are outrageous.
Yes.
And it seems sometimes that the smaller developments, the bread and butter developments that
Yes.
people get given a hard time. I think quite often with those developments, what it is they may be quite unique sites. They may be out in the countryside where they can argue that there's a special, unique design that they are proposing. So there are so many factors that can influence it. It may be a dilapidated building that was originally residential and they're bringing back into residential use, maybe a listed building. There are many different factors, but one of the key things is this. Internal alterations to buildings do not normally require planning permission. So you can do whatever you want inside the building. It's just the external envelope that needs approval. And it could be a question of negotiation with the local authority. What we don't often see in these programs is the journey. We don't see that they applied for planning permission, they were rejected, and it had to go to committee and it had to go to appeal, because those things take months, if not years.
Yeah.
What we see is, by and large, the end product.
Yes, and the very ugly Wendy houses at the end. You're like, I'm not sure what you're building, but no.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about buildings, and we're talking about some very unique buildings. From an architectural standpoint, what is your favorite building?
Now you've put me on the spot. What is my favorite building? You know what? I've been into some amazing buildings. I get to go into amazing properties. Now, there is a property that I went into a few years ago. It was a house, okay? And it was in the Boltons. I don't know if you've heard of the Boltons. The Boltons is one of the, if not the most expensive area in London.
Okay.
It's in Kensington and Chelsea. And it was these two houses that were knocked together into one mansion. Let's call it two mansions being combined into one.
Wow. A mega mansion.
Mega mansion. An Uber mansion. It was just absolutely stunning. This building was just unbelievable. Basement conversion, 5 stories above that,
Wow.
all painted white, and it was pristine, and it was just a fantastic space. What they'd done with it architecturally inside, in terms of interior design, was just stunning. So that for me was one of the highlights.
Okay.
Definitely.
So, and in your travels, what would you, personally say is the least liked? Let me rephrase that. In all of your travels, which
Yeah.
city would you say, okay, this city wasn't planned right? There's definitely something wrong.
Well, as a cyclist, I would say that London has a long way to go in terms of cycling provision. I would definitely be looking in. I mean, I suppose one of the reasons you don't want to cycle is because you see it as being unsafe. Now, maybe if we
Yes.
had more dedicated cycle routes, segregated, that wouldn't be an issue for you. I think as a cyclist, we need to design the city from ground up,
Yeah.
and it's often just tacked on. Oh yes, here's a cycle route, but where does it end? You still often find yourself shunted into the road,
Yes.
and you're quite vulnerable. So I think having dedicated cycle routes in a city like London would be fantastic. We've got it in Holland, the Netherlands, London. So London needs to step up and step up to the challenge of integrating cycle routes.
I mean, I think London has so much potential for better planning, because even for pedestrians and walking, there are areas you're thinking this wasn't really planned with people moving around in mind.
Yeah, I think it's evolved over the years, and what we need is a holistic approach. We need, let's say, the Mayor of London to implement these strategies across boroughs, so that it's joined up. So you don't have one borough doing something particularly well, and then it ends on their borough boundary. It needs a holistic approach
Yeah.
to solve the problem.
Well, let's hope the mayor or our next mayor, when that happens, will actually take that into consideration. Yes.
Yes.
So we're looking at your company, and we're
Yeah.
looking at the fact that you've been recently shortlisted as the finalist in the prestigious RTPI Awards for Planning
Yeah.
Excellence,
Yeah.
in the Small Planning Consultancy of the Year category. What are the RTPI Awards?
So the RTPI stands for the Royal Town Planning Institute, and the awards are basically to highlight excellence within the planning field. And there are many examples of excellence, and there are many different categories. And we fall into the small consultancy category. So it's really just highlighting practices that have excellence at the heart of their practice, and it may be in different forms. It may be in how they handle clients, it may be in the projects they work on. For us, our ethos and our strapline is planning permission without the headaches.
Right.
So at the center of all we do is it's all about providing an outstanding customer experience, ensuring that when you come to us, we take all of that frustration, all of that red tape away, and providing an A to Z service, keeping you updated throughout the process. Just thinking, if I'm a customer, if I'm a client, how would I want to be treated? That's how that was born. So for
Right.
us, it's really about the customer and making sure that they are always in the loop and we deal with them fairly. And you know what? That's actually borne so much fruit over the years, because there's repeat business. If you look out for people, they come back. You establish friendships. They refer
Yes.
people to you. We've had so many glowing Google reviews from customers, and I think it happens with ease if you genuinely pursue that relationship and wanting to provide that service. They will. It follows. All of the good stuff follows.
Okay. And I think that's actually very important, because you don't go into business, like you said, for the awards. You go in for the people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. When I started, it was never about, yes, if I start this business, I'm going to get an award. That wasn't even on my radar. I didn't even consider that. It's not about the awards. It's that an award is just a byproduct of what we do day in, day out. Business is a slog. Business is what it is. There are highs and lows in business, but you've got to persevere in what you do. Awards are, let's say, a validation, a confirmation. It's a pat on the back saying, "Look, well done."
Yeah.
But we knew anyway, regardless of that, that we were making a difference, that we are doing well. We know that because our customers tell us that, and we know within ourselves, even if our customers weren't saying that we are doing our absolute best on every case. Something I always say to customers is, I would treat this case as if it was my own. If it was my own development, this is how I would want to handle it.
Okay.
People want to know that you're putting yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, people don't care what you tell them. People will only remember how you made them feel. And if you made them feel that this was important to you, they will come back. Yeah.
I've found that to be true over the years. Definitely. So people matter.
Exactly, people matter. And you said something in your answer earlier. You said business is a slog. Now, you're not only in business, you have a team that you actually have to lead. And we know when we look out in the social media space and you see people in business, we see what I call the glory shots. We see how well it's doing. So, looking at how far you've come in your business, and this is a question for you as a leader, how do you handle your moments of doubts?
You basically just, for me, you put one foot in front of the other. You just continue, because giving up is not an option. Mm-hmm. Going back is not an option.
Right.
So the only way to go is forwards.
Okay.
And if I've been brought this far, I will continue to the end. That's my perspective on this. There's going back, stopping is not an option. So the only way is forward. Yes, there are doubts, but there will always be doubts in every area. I don't care who you are. You could be Anthony Joshua in the ring, trained for 3 months. Yes, he may have that doubt, but it's what do you do with that doubt? You have to overcome that doubt and rise above that doubt, and that's all it takes.
Okay, and that's actually very important. So I'm going to ask you this question. Mm-hmm. How do you incorporate self-care into your life so that your business keeps running, you keep running, and you keep doing the amazing things that you're doing?
So self-care in what context? Just general?
General self-care. How do you take care of you as the business owner, the creative, the face of the business? Okay,
so for me, as a Christian, I have certain boundaries that I put in place. So it's staying connected to God,
right?
Spending time with God, and also on a practical level, it's just having boundaries. So, for example, I made a decision years ago that I wasn't going to, and some people would say this is a bad thing. I wasn't going to give my mobile number out to clients. Some clients have my mobile from years ago, but I realized that quite often people would call out of hours and wouldn't respect my time. So I have my family time. I have time when I'm not at work. I will switch off, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's difficult to achieve, but I think just having a clear cutoff point between work and home life. Otherwise, it can take over. It can become all-consuming, and that's very easy to happen. Mm-hmm. So just having quality downtime.
That's good. And I think that's really, really important, and especially because sometimes we forget that we need to have those boundaries.
Absolutely. But, again, just, my faith has played a big role in what I do, and I couldn't have started a business without that, because every step of the way, every doubt, and I'm like, looking at the Bible, thinking, what does God have to say about this aspect of business, or what I'm facing here? And even, even when I was contemplating starting business, there was a scripture that was like always ringing in my mind, and it was from it was from Ecclesiastes 11:4, and it was like, he who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. And it was just basically saying that, look, you can observe the wind as much as you want, okay, but that's not going to get you anywhere. You've got to actually get into it in order to be counted. You've got to throw your hat in the ring and be prepared to get wet, to get dirty, in order to make a difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And looking at your journey so far, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
My 18-year-old self, oh my gosh. I would say dream big. Think of the impossible. Go for it. You can do this. You can win this. Run your race. Don't take no for an answer. Knock on doors. Bash those doors down. All of those things. You're invincible. Just go for it. Whatever you want to do, if that's on your heart, I genuinely believe that you have the giftings and the talents to take you there. Okay. For me, I would say this as well. For me, going into business, it was like a birthing process. It was a nagging feeling that just wouldn't go away. Now, I could have quelled that. The things that could have quelled that would have been fear, doubt, all of those things. I chose not to let those things overpower me. So I would certainly tell myself and tell anyone, never allow, if you're having those sort of nagging feelings of wanting to birth something, start something, go for it. Obviously, you need to equip yourself. You need to go on the courses. You need to study, etc. Mm-hmm. Providing you've done all of that, you still need to take that leap of faith and go for it.
Okay. So, what do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy is to have made a difference within the planning field and the business field. To be able to also pass the business on, so and to empower my colleagues. MZA Planning shouldn't end with me. I should be able to have people that can understand the vision of the company and can take that forward. So I've said to my colleagues, look, we need to have a situation where things don't always have to come through me in order to operate. What happens if I'm on holiday? What happens if I'm away? So it's about empowering people as well, encouraging people, building them up so that they can take that on themselves. But for MZA, just to continue to grow, to continue to prosper and make a difference.
Okay. That's a powerful legacy, and we'll be watching what MZA will be doing in the future, and looking forward to seeing more amazing things from your company.
Thank you. Yeah. Watch this space.
Yes. So we have come to that point in the show where we talk about our So Loud moment of the week. So Yussuf, what is your So Loud moment?
So my So Loud moment is to a very special person. Now, this person runs a company, and this person is so inspirational. She runs a catering company, and the catering company is called Peppercorn. Simply Peppercorn. It's called Peppercorn, and this person is a top chef, beyond gifted. Okay, she's got blessed hands. She has trained at the top catering school in London called Leith's Training. She's catered for events in some of the most prestigious venues in London, such as the Royal Exchange. Has clients including ESPN, IMG, Harrow Independent School, NFL, Snapchat, Shazam. Looking to open her first shop, is a mother, is a wife, and that is my wife.
Oh.
Yeah, and her name is Ajwa Mwanza of Peppercorn. And so I want to big her up and say,
All right, so let's big up your wife, Ajwa, and Peppercorn with a huge round of applause.
Absolutely. She deserves it. So she caters, she does a lot of fine dining work, and she does a lot of work within the corporate sector, and she does a lot of catering for African and Caribbean weddings as well. So you can find her on the Instagram.
Cool. We'll check her out on Instagram, and we'll probably get her on the show to come and talk about her shop when she's finally opened it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, what are you currently reading, or what was the last book you read?
Ooh, the last book I read was a book by, what's his name? It's by this singer whose name escapes me right now. You've put me on the spot. And he's a gospel singer. And his name is, oh gosh, let me see. It was all about his journey into the music industry and through the music industry.
Okay.
And let me see. Very inspirational book because he was so real with all of his struggles that he went through. Sometimes we can sugarcoat things, but this was you got the real deal. And his name still escapes me.
It won't be Kirk Franklin, would it?
It wasn't Kirk Franklin.
Okay.
Just opening my Kindle here. And his name that's it, Anthony Evans.
Okay.
Anthony Evans, Unexpected Places. Go read that book. Very, very encouraging book. Very encouraging.
We'll check it out.
Yeah.
So, how do you bounce back from setbacks?
How do I bounce back from setbacks? I think there have been so many setbacks, but I just persevere. It's just perseverance. We're in the recruitment process at the moment, and we've had a couple of setbacks there. What do? You just keep looking. You keep searching. You keep on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that simple.
Okay.
For me.
So you bounce back and persevere.
Absolutely. I've seen a lot of people. I think you can't underestimate perseverance. I've seen people flip from one thing to another in life, and never particularly establish or stick to one thing. I think perseverance works, and perseverance will pay off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what's next for you? Tell us about your future projects.
So, for us, obviously, we've got the RTPI Awards coming up on the 24th of April. So that's in the immediate future.
Yes.
Beyond that, that's really what we're looking at, is to consolidate the team and grow. Okay. That's what we really need to do. Is to really we want to establish the company so that people who need applications will know that there is a company out there that can make a difference. That's what we want to do for the future. We work on a range of things, a wide range of projects, from restaurants, establishing restaurants, to obviously extensions, houses, new houses, conversions, HMOs, all of those things. We want to do more of that, much more of that. We've worked on bigger projects as well, in Bristol, in areas outside of London and beyond. But yeah, just really more. We want to do more.
Okay. So how can people connect with MZA Planning, and how can even like the youths who are going through college and university say, well, this is an industry I want to discover. How can they reach out to you to discuss an opportunity for mentorship, or just to get to know the industry?
So we're on all the social media platforms. We're on Twitter, MZA Planning. We're on LinkedIn, again, MZA Planning, or my LinkedIn, which is Yussuf Mwanza. We're on Facebook. I think we've got a Facebook page, and we're also on Instagram, MZA Planning. So yeah, I think if you obviously there's a website, mzaplanning.com. Reach out to us on any of those, and we'll pick that up and get back in touch. Okay. Definitely.
All right. So thank you, Yussuf. I have one last question for you.
Uh-huh.
Time travel. As an observer or a change agent, which would you take?
Time travel, or sorry, say that again. Repeat that.
So time travel. Do you want to time travel as an observer or somebody that's going in to make changes to the past for good?
Ooh, changes to the past. I don't think we can necessarily change the past. I think what we can do is to affect the now, right. Make changes now that will have good outcomes for the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let me just extend that a bit. What period of time would you love to travel back to?
Oh, gosh. What period of time would I love to travel back to? I mean, I love my music. I love all the greats, all the James Browns and all of that. And I think it would be great to see some of those concerts in the 60s.
Ooh.
I would love to see some of those great artists perform. Absolutely. Yeah. In some of those, in the States, I would love to see, let's say, someone like James Brown. Yeah. Yeah,
that's a good one. I would love to do a Prince concert, but like the old Prince concerts way back when everything it was just flamboyant and just you're like, dude, how? And you're like, yeah.
Yeah. I saw Prince, so yeah, I've seen him a couple of times live. But yeah, for me, I never saw James Brown. There's still great acts around now that I would love to see. The Smokey Robinsons and all that. I'm into the real music and the real vocals and real instruments. That's my vibe. But there is so much talent around today as well.
Yeah, this is true. But you can't beat that, that old school sound where everything was, elaborate and beautiful, and there was just something to that sound. So yes, I do understand. Yes. So Yussuf, I want to say a huge thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me on. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
You're so welcome. So folks, it's a wrap. We've had Yussuf Mwanza of MZA Planning. This is a man that said, I'd seen enough of a situation and took steps and started the first and only Black-owned planning business in the UK. If you are having your house extended, if you are changing things, have a conversation with this man before you end up having to deal with a system that will drive you around the bend. So once again, to my incredible guest, Yussuf, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Lillian.
You're welcome. All right, it's a wrap, folks. Join us same time next week.
You've been listening to the Shine Out Loud Show. If you want to connect with us or let us know what you thought of today's show, be sure to follow us on Twitter @Shine Out Show.